Hola y bienvenidos otra vez. Hoy vamos a hablar sobre los complementos directos y los complementos indirectos. ¿Okay? Y qué ocurre cuando ellos ocurren juntos en una frase. Okay, so the topic for today is double object pronouns, what to do when you have a DOP and an IDOP in the same sentence. But before we can talk about using them together, let's review what is a direct object and what is an indirect object. Please go to your note guide on section 1. We're going to review direct objects and direct object pronouns. We learned these in first semester, but let's recap. First, you need to know that a direct object receives the action of the verb. Okay, so if you were saying, I drink coffee in the morning, coffee is going to be your direct object because it's what you drink. In this example you see in red, we do our homework. What do we do? Our homework. So homework is the direct object. An easy way to always find the direct object in the sentence is to ask the question who or what about the verb. So, I read a book. What do I read? Book. Book is your direct object. And Juan sees Eva. Who does Juan see? Eva. So Eva is your direct object. And then lastly, like all pronouns do, direct object pronouns take the place of the direct object. Okay, so essentially a pronoun replaces the noun. Okay, in the example, she buys the ticket. She buys it. Alright, so let's look at what are our direct object pronouns in Spanish. On section 1 of your note guide, we're going to fill out that chart. Okay, you should know that your direct object pronouns are me, te, lo, la, nos, os, los, las. And just a reminder on when using pronouns in Spanish, location is important and it's different than English. Just a reminder that when you have one verb, your DOP, okay, or any pronoun for that matter, will go right before the conjugated verb. The example here is yo te veo, I see you. And then you have two options when you have two verbs. Okay, you can place that DOP before the first verb, or you can attach it to the second verb. Okay, so you'll hear me say time and time again your universal pronoun rule. One verb, one option. It's got to go in front. Two verbs, two options. In front of the first, attached to the second. Okay, let's move down to indirect object pronouns. Indirect objects, they answer the questions to whom or for whom. Okay, so let's look at this example in green. She writes a letter to John. Who's she writing to? She's writing to John. So John is your indirect object. A little trick for finding the indirect object is that many times in English the word to or for is right before what is your indirect object. Just like direct objects, the indirect object pronouns are going to replace the indirect object noun, okay, in English. So I give her a ticket. Yo le doy un boleto. Lastly, any sentence that contains an indirect object also has a direct object in it, and whether it's stated or implied, the direct object is in there. So let's look at the example here. He brings me the uniform. Who does he bring the uniform to? He brings it to me. So me is your indirect. And what does he bring? He brings the uniform. That is your direct object. Let's take a minute and fill out in section 2 of your note guide. Let's fill out the box with all of our indirect object pronouns. Those are me, te, le, nos, os, les. And you can see there under their meaning that, again, you've got to or for me, to or for you. Very common to be able to put the words to or for in front of your indirect object. Just another reminder on location, just like DOPs or direct object pronouns, if you've got one verb, your pronoun comes before that conjugated verb. And if you've got two verbs, then you have two options. You put it in front of the first verb, or you attach it to the second. Okay. So, say I want to have a sentence where there's a DOP and an IDOP in the sentence. which one do I put first? I know that if there's one verb, the pronoun goes in front, but do I put the dot first or the I dot? Okay, let's look at a sentence here before we answer that question. The server brings the broth to Juan and me. Let's dissect the sentence. So the server is the subject. Brings is the verb. Okay, what does he bring? He brings the broth. So there's our direct object. Who does he bring it to? He brings it to us. So there's my indirect object, pronoun, and here's my indirect object. Remember that it's common for them to include the indirect object noun with the indirect object pronoun, and that's just for clarification. If I had handwritten this, I would have put in parentheses around the awan, iami. Okay, so what if I wanted to rewrite this sentence and say, the server brings the broth, or excuse me, the server brings it to us? I know this is where my I dot goes, but where am I going to put the word it? Where am I going to put lo? Okay, well, your I dot will come first. So I'm actually going to put lo immediately after nos. El camarero nos lo trae. He brings it to us. So, a little acronym to help you remember which order do your pronouns go in. You need to remember rid. And that means your reflexive would always be the first pronoun. Your indirect would be the second, or indirect then direct. Okay? Right now we're not focusing on using reflexives with directs, but we will in the future. Okay? Right now you're just doing the ID of rid. All right, that's going to take us to section 4. Okay, go back to the bottom section of number 3, and this is just something to do with pronunciation and stress. Okay, we talked about that when there's two verbs, you can put the pronouns before the first verb or attach them to the second, right? But if I'm attaching two pronouns, which is essentially two syllables, to the end of a word, that changes where the natural stress falls. So when that happens, I'm going to need to accent. Okay, so she needs to bring them, or bring it to us. If I choose to put my pronouns on the end, nos lo, I must pick up an accent on the stressed syllable. If it's an infinitive, that accent will fall on the A of AR, the E of ER verbs, and the I of IR verbs. Okay, let's do some practice exercises. So please go to section 5 of your note guide, and I want you to rewrite these sentences, replacing the direct object with a dop. Okay, and always remember your pronouns have to go in the order of rid. So this one says, I serve the salads to you. Please rewrite this sentence and say, I serve them to you. You're going to need to get rid of las ensaladas. Okay, make it into a dop and then place it appropriately. Please pause me so that you can work on these 5 sentences. Okay, let's review our answers. I serve them to you. Yo te la sirvo. 2. She gives it to me. Ella me la da. 3. They bring the desserts to us. They bring them to us. Ellos nos los traen. 4. Ooh, careful in 4 and 5. We have 2 verbs, so we have 2 options where we could have put our pronouns. We're going to serve it to you. Nosotros vamos a servírtelo. Servírtela. Or we could have said, te la vamos a servir. And number 5, I'm going to give it to you. Yo te lo voy a dar. Or you could have said, voy a dártelo. If you did put dártelo, make sure you had an accent on the A of dar. Okay, we are now to section 6 of your note guide, which we need to talk about the la rule. Okay, when using 2 pronouns in a sentence, if both of those pronouns start with the letter L, you're going to need to change the indirect object pronoun to say. So either that lay or lace is going to become say. Let's look at this example. This says, I give the bill to Juan. If I want to change that and say, to make this a dop, and say I give it to Juan, or I give it to him, then I'm going to have, if I don't know any better, I'm going to have yo le la doy. I don't want le la doy. Okay, that's my la la rule. They don't want la la. They don't like redundant sounds. So they will change this first le to say. And to say I give it to him, se la doy. Alright, let's look at another example. I serve the tea to my friends. If I want to change this and say I serve it to them, I need to replace tea with the word it, which is lo. And if I don't know any better, I'm going to get yo les lo sirvo. I don't want la la. I do not want the la la together. So change les, and you will get I serve it to them. Yo se lo sirvo. Do please take the time on section 6. I gave you these 2 examples, and I made errors. I did not use the la la rule adequately. Please fix those for me. Okay, lastly, we have our last practice section. I want you to translate the following sentences using an IDOP and a DOP. Remember that your pronouns must go in the order of rid. So in number 1, you sell it to me. The verb to sell is vender. Careful on number 2, they serve them to him. You need to think about the la la rule. Don't come up with le las. And then lastly, she gives it to us. Take a minute, pause me, and work through these examples. Alright, let's review. You sell it to me. Me la vendes. 2, they serve them to him. Se las sirven. And 3, she gives it to us. Nos lo da. Okay, that's it for the notes today on double object pronouns and using the acronym RID. If you have any questions, please write them down on section 8 of your note guide. You may also see the notes provided on page